to another edition of Small Biz Live. Today, we're actually not specifically talking about a small business, but we are talking about the history of NRBBA. My name is Mickey Marafino, and I'm with Mickey M Marketing. And I've recently been working on updating the NRBBA website because I serve on the board of NRBBA, and found out that Ernie Odell was one of the founding fathers, and he wrote the great history of how the NRBBA came to be. And I caught up with Ernie, and he said that he would be happy to tell us a little bit more. So welcome, Ernie Odell, who I consider to be one of the icons of Redondo Beach. You were the former president of the Redondo Beach Chamber of Commerce, our executive director, I believe the title was at the time. And also you were our elected city treasurer for many, many years. So thank you so much for your time today, Ernie.
No, thank you very much, Mickey, and thanks for inviting me to spend some time with you.
It's great. It's great. So I knew a little bit about your history with the chamber, and I think in my head, I just imagined that that's how you got involved with the founding of the NRBBA, but I realized I was wrong because you actually had a small business on Artesia.
Yeah, back in the late 70s, by 78, 79, I bought a building on Artesia Blvd. It was an 8-unit place, and in the front of it was a insurance place and another little office. So that kind of got me involved on the boulevard. And before that, I had been in the aerospace industry for many, many years, and had already served in the Army, and I was basically out in doing real estate. And I found out that if you joined the Chamber of Commerce, there was a group called the Redondo Beach North Redondo Beach Business Association. And if you joined the chamber and you got involved in that group, there was a certain perks that you could get for part of your improvement along Artesia Boulevard.
Okay.
And so improving the building, I was interested in that, and so I joined the chamber and went to start going to the NRBBA meetings, and they had just formed very shortly before that. And so I got active with them. I never did use the program for my building because it was just more paperwork than the amount of money I was going to spend. So it was just, but I got interested in NRBBA, got interested in the boulevard, and just wanting to be helpful and kind of just see what we could all do to improve the boulevard.
Who were some of the other businesses that were involved when the NRBBA really took off? Well,
probably the primary person that I would say was the more leader than anybody was a guy by the name of Tom Fouts. He's now deceased. Loved the guy. He was like a true friend. Mm-hmm. He and his wife Charlotte basically owned a full block of Artesia Boulevard between McKay and Vale.
Okay.
And it was where the Emerald Garden is, and the laundry and the liquor store and their little nice cute little drink place and so forth, and sandwich shop.
Right.
But he was very active, and so was she. And then also there was a guy named by the name of Hank Corsell. He was over on Aviation Boulevard, which was also included in the
right.
in the North Redondo part. And it was Hank the plumber, and he was very active. And then Paula from Las Brisas was active.
Right. Yep, Paula's still at Las Brisas.
Yeah, I love that too. And so then it just basically I just started attending their meetings, and we were meeting at one of the Mexican restaurants that were further out on the boulevard. It wasn't Las Brisas. I can't remember the name of it now. I'm sorry, but she was active, and then there were 2 or 3 others, and that was about it. And so we just started doing things. And one of the first things that came up. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what kind of projects were you working on at the time?
Well, probably the biggest and best that we accomplished, other than sort of helping the Galleria at some point, I'll talk about that a little later.
Okay.
But was the undergrounding of the power lines along Artesia Boulevard. And before they were undergrounded, it was quite unsightly because all the poles and wires went all the way down Artesia.
Right.
And I have some before and after photos that I was happy to have because it was really kind of an accomplishment. But the NRBBA was the one that was pushing the city to apply for the undergrounding. And the way that worked was every city puts funds in. They get funds from over time for undergrounding. And so each city can decide where they're going to spend their money on that particular undergrounding. So Artesia was something that we were trying to get the attention there, so they would spend the money there. And so we finally got the city to apply, and the Edison company and so forth to put it in their project list. And finally, they actually undergrounded the whole thing, and that was a proud moment for NRBBA.
Well, even just looking at my background right now, you can tell that made such a huge, huge difference in just beautifying the boulevard, is taking down all those power lines.
It really did change it. I mean, if you looked at it before, a lot of times you don't notice it because it's just there.
Right.
But when you see it gone, it's dramatic, and it was a real good feeling of accomplishment. And
it's a huge project.
Yeah, so that was one of them, and then the Galleria, when it first it used to be the South Bay Shopping Center out there, was built in the 50s, and it was there for quite a few years. And then I can't remember the exact year, but it was
I think Bay Company opened in 1957.
Okay, yeah. So that'd be about there, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Galleria, I think, went in the 80s, wasn't it?
85.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was the year I took the chamber exec's job. So that was
okay.
So we were all active in trying to boost that. There were some naysayers in the city. They didn't want any growth, no change. That there's always that element.
Right.
So we were kind of the ones that were trying to help get that new beautiful Galleria. And it finally came to pass, and it was all built, and we were all out there in the parking lot cheering. So yeah, that's another thing we were proud of.
Right. And the Galleria kind of spurred North Redondo being the economic engine of the entire city, right? You were the city treasurer, so very well aware of all of that.
Yeah, that didn't take place for another 10 years. But during the meantime, obviously the Galleria was basically a economic engine for the city, sales taxes and other things. Excuse me. And then that kind of was the genesis of a lot of other beneficial change. The city a little later decided to do a full-on remodel all the way down from Galleria to Aviation, and they did a lot of streetscape issues and resignalization, and just a lot of very much of nice improvement all the way down the boulevard, and that really helped a lot too. I think that was another good time.
And was that like right around 2000, if I'm remembering correctly, or that's one renovation that I remember when they really worked a lot on the median and creating the left-hand turn pockets, right?
Yeah, that was probably around that time. And but you mentioned the left turn pockets, and that's very interesting because one thing I mentioned some time ago was that when we were meeting with the city staff at the NRBBA meetings along that point in time, they would come out with all the improvements that were recommended, and they would try to get the NRBBA, because we were representing the business district, to spread the word that this is what's coming, and if you have any problems with it, let's discuss it. So we were in those discussions with the city engineer and other people at the city at the NRBBA meetings. And I remember one of the things that used to irk me was you couldn't turn left against an arrow, because the arrow would be on for a period of time, and then when the arrow wasn't on, you had to sit there through a whole light waiting when there's sometimes no traffic coming the other way.
Right.
So one of the things I mentioned to the city engineer was I would really like to see us make these the new smart lights that when the green arrow isn't on, you can still turn. And so now it's basically the yellow caution arrow that allows you to go ahead.
Right.
And it sounds like a small thing, but to me, I guess I'm just a little bit of an efficiency person.
Right.
And so it irks me when I have to sit at a light when there's no cars coming and I can't turn left.
Right.
Because there's really no reason I shouldn't, but except for the light. So they went ahead with that. And to this day, many, many years later, every time I drive Artesia Boulevard and I actually get into that left turn pocket, or even when I don't, I do get a smile on my face because I think to myself, I'm so glad that they did that.
Right. They listened to you.
That wasn't an original plan. So that
Right.
was something that.
Well, I know when I drive down Artesia Boulevard, there are a couple of things that I'll be thinking about you and appreciating you. One is the undergrounding. I mean, you can't really appreciate that if you haven't seen it before, but I know it looks so pretty now because of that work, and that was a lot of work. But then also when I can buzz through my left-hand turn because there's no traffic coming in the other direction, I have you to thank for that too. So thanks, Ernie. You just
Thank you for
made me
giving me.
think of you almost every day now.
Wow. Well, thank you for giving me that immense pleasure of but takes a village. So
Yeah, it does. And thankfully, you have been involved with creating the NRBBA, which, that was over 40 years ago.
yeah, right at the beginning they started, and that's when I heard about them. And when I went over there, I was the person in the room, and from there on, we just try to do our best to accomplish things, do things for the community. And I know the second year that I was active with NRBBA, we were getting together in our NRBBA meeting in one of the restaurants there, and before we started meeting at the library or in that area. But the thought, what can we do to give something back to the community? And the thought came, well, the Riviera Village has their Frontier Days. Let's see if we can do something that would give to our end of town.
Right.
So up with putting on a fair, mostly for kids oriented. So we ended up creating what was called, it's still today, I think, called SpringFest, if it's still going on.
We do.
And and so it's been 40 years, and I was actually in the NRBBA. We had a treasurer, secretary, president-elect, and so forth, and I was on that part of the board. And so what did they do, since I'm press blood, is they asked Ernie to be the first SpringFest chairman.
Oh,
so
wow.
For the inaugural year of that, I was the one that was the active one, and we got it off the ground the first year. And then the second year, we had a lady by the name of Christine Masler came in, and she ran it for a year or so. And then I want to mention Mark Conti, because Mark Conti and his wife BJ, who did the Hermosa Art Festival for many years, and others, and in Long Beach, and they worked at the River Village and so forth. They did the SpringFest for, I don't know, 20 years or more, and they really brought it.
Where did you have SpringFest when it first started?
Be able to do other projects, but it was also, it was a real pride thing too, that we saw all the families from North Redondo out there enjoying, that, and it was put on by the business association. That was kind of cool.
Where was it located when you first started having it?
Well, we did it almost always at the aviation park.
Okay.
Trying to remember if the first year was over at the school on Vale and one of those streets over in the North Redondo.
When I first came into town, I remember it used to be over at South Bay Center, where CompUSA was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was a little later on,
in the 90s. Yeah.
but it was at the aviation park most of the time.
And that's where it is now. It went
Yeah.
back there again.
Oh, good. Yeah. And then yeah, there was other things like we had the Barnum and Bailey Circus come to town one time, made back in the 90s. And they had come to the chamber. The chamber had sent them over to the NRBBA because they couldn't find a place in the South that would accommodate them. So they ended up actually going in the Galleria parking lot out there one year. That was quite a long time ago. But there's a lot of good memories, and NRBBA has been a very good organization for the North Redondo area.
Yeah, and it's been fun for me to kind of watch it grow, and now it's really expanded outside of businesses only. Now there's actually neighbors and residents who are members of NRBBA too. And I think that's so important because it's a community that all helps each other, right? You know, the
Yeah,
successful businesses are great for the residents because we can walk or ride our bikes to enjoy those businesses. And you know, it's a very mutually successful arrangement when the residents and the businesses can all really support each other like that.
yeah, and I think that's a wonderful thing because if you look at a lot of people are working from home today, and will be probably from now on. So there's a lot of people that are in business, but they're not on the actual boulevard or in a storefront, and
Right.
that's another good ability for them to get out and mix with the rest of the business community and make themselves known. And I know a lot of those people really want to give something too, and so it's a you get something from giving something, and it's a
Exactly.
good way to go. Yeah.
Well, and the NRBBA also was very fortunate to have you as an artist, as a member. I'm going to share my screen for a moment and see if we can show this great logo that you created back in the day.
Well, the story behind that is that when I was active in the NRBBA, in fact, I was the president of NRBBA the year after Tom Fallitz was
Okay.
president the year we started SpringFest. So I think it was 80, 82, 83, 84, somewhere in there. But the logo that the NRBBA was using at that time was basically a key to the city. So that was like a length of a key, and the head of the key was basically the NRBBA. And it was a little too busy, and it just didn't seem to have the proper feel of a logo that I thought it could be improved. So
Right.
I designed this one at that time, and just at home in my own little art studio at home, and put this together and gave it to them and said, "There's a new logo if you want to use it." And they did. I'd used it for a number of years, and I think over time it kind of dropped off the page because in a volunteer organization like NRBBA, if somebody doesn't know, that as they come in as president, they don't realize certain things, then it just drops off. And so that's kind of what happened.
Right. The transition. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I also have, I got you to share some of your artwork with me, and I wanted to see if there's a way that I can share this on screen. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Oh, good. Let's see. This I thought was so cool. Look at that. Can you see
Yeah.
that? Is that you painting those tiny little masterpieces?
Well, yeah, that's little frogs and fishes and so forth, the turtles, rather, I should say. And I was in Hawaii at the time. We were on vacation, and some friends um, that we knew there that lived there were being very nice with hosting us to certain things. So I didn't have much art stuff with me, so I just bought a little art kit and these little tiny canvases,
I love
and
it.
I gave it to them as a little gesture. So that was just something fun. It was a
Yeah,
little,
let's see. And I'm so impressed with like all the different kinds of mediums, and I mean, this almost looks like a photograph.
well, it was there was a photographic effort that I it didn't look like the background. I mean, I had the horses, but the rest of it was just sort of not much there.
Right.
So I created the background of making it look kind of like Wyoming or Montana, horses out in an open prairie. And it's just something I guess I like to do things that just so I can feel like I can.
And this is a gallery opening?
Yeah, this was actually at a gallery up in El Segundo, a really nice young lady.
At the point?
No, this was actually further, it was right downtown.
Oh, okay.
And she had an art studio there, and she was teaching kids certain little art things and so forth. And right next door, so to speak, was the Banner Stationers, and I was over there getting a new planner. And I saw her shop, and I walked in, and I visited with her, and she was just so pleasant. So I got to talking to her about my artwork and so forth, and I showed her a few pieces on my phone, and she says, "Wow, why don't you come over and we'll put like a showing?" I said, "Okay." So this happened to be that's most of the paintings that were there. There were 2 or 3 more come in the window and so forth, but that was one of my showings at that time, and I was doing that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to stop sharing and go back to, I mean, you've been so generous with your time in Redondo Beach and the things that you've done. And I mean, you have such a legacy on Artesia Boulevard, but tell us about your backdrop and the shirt that you're wearing and what that represents.
Well, thank you. That's another thing that I'm very happy and proud to see in Redondo Beach. What's in my background there is the Veterans Memorial down in Veterans Park. And what's on my shirt is the logo of that. Try to get a little closer. And if you can kind of see in the logo,
right,
there's like a star shape with
yep.
5 pyramids. Well,
and it says Veterans Memorial Passport.
Yeah.
Yep.
Basically, what happened was at Veterans Park, there was a memorial, but it was down at the very south end, and it was very understated. It was basically just a circle with some bricks around it and a flagpole. And there were a few plaques there from earlier, back in the 30s. But what had happened is in 1984, for the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, in 83, they'd come to all the cities or told all the cities in the LA area, please dress up your entryways to your community so that when people are visiting and traveling around Southern California, we have these nice, things. So the city put together what I call the Isle of Pompeii, the rotunda up at the corner of Artesia, switching places here. Catalina and Torrance Boulevard, right above the pier where Veterans Park starts.
Mm-hmm.
They had this beautiful entry to the park, and it was right on the corner. It was gorgeous, but they didn't continue it down into the park. So it was an entry to the park that went nowhere.
Right.
And basically, they went 5 steps down on the west side of it, going down towards the ocean and the park. Went down a little grassy knoll, and then there was a barrier wall of a fence. And then it dropped off about 6 feet. But you had to walk around and go down some little steps over by the Elks Lodge, or you had to go down by the senior center. But here's this grand entry, but nowhere to go with it.
Right.
Well, I was in the park one time, and I was down in the park, and I was looking back up at that, and I said, it'd be so easy to just take that barricade out or the fence out and put a grand staircase there, bring the whole thing down, and have the memorial right there. So that year I happened to be, that was right after I got elected city treasurer, as a matter of fact. So I was the only department head at the city that was a veteran, and we had a Veteran Day tribute, but it was basically not done, it was done in the Veterans Park, but it was down in the pan shell, which was way down by the far corner.
Right.
And so in that process, one of the meetings at that particular no, it wasn't a task force then, it was just basically the Veterans Day and Memorial Day, but more Memorial Day actually.
Okay.
So we were having these meetings, and the Park and Recreation Director, got by the name of Greg Kind at that time, he and I were sitting in one of these meetings trying to plan all the stuff we were going to do and who's going to come and who's going to do what. And I mentioned to him, I said, you know, would you join me in the park after the meeting? And he said, sure. So we went down to the park, and the city engineer happened to be in the meeting too, because they oftentimes did things to set up and so forth. So we're down in the park, and I pointed out to him, I says, if we just brought this grand staircase down into the park and put a memorial here, it would be so cool that the grand entry of the park actually comes into the park and leads to the memorial. He said, oh, that's a great idea. He says, can you draw that up? And I said, sure. So I drew it up. I don't think he knew I had any art ability, but anyway, I drew up a rendering of it, and he liked it. So we ended up taking it to the city council, and they ended up approving it. And it was another guy at that time by the name of John Simpson, who was a Marine, and he's now deceased as well. Great guy. But he was kind of the motivator as well. He got behind it right away. Anyway, we finally got the city to approve it, but they didn't have any money for it.
Right.
So they said, why don't you guys create a committee or something and raise the funds for it? And if you raise the funds, you know, fine. So we put together what's called the Redondo Beach Veterans Memorial Task Force. And it kind of languished for a few years because we just didn't have the horsepower to get it really, you know, to raise. We needed over $250,000.
Wow.
So it ended up, we got Herb Macy involved. He's
Yeah, he still is involved.
And he's been our chairman for a number of years. It wouldn't be there without him. So he did a great job, and we all did a great job. And we raised over $400,000 in the period, and we got it 10 years ago, and it's been there. And we've been having great tribute their Memorial Day and Veterans Day ever since. And
they're still selling the bricks too. I bought a brick for my dad who served in Korea. So I bought a brick. So I mean, it's still, the fundraising continues. So it's great for all the maintenance and everything, right?
Yeah, you bet. And thank you so much for doing that. And I, as I've said to a number of the people in the Vets Task Force over the years, this is such a pleasure, because the brick program there's over 1,000 bricks in the ground now. So that's over 1,000 people that are able to go down there and have pride in the fact that their loved one, you know, that they remember for their service is, you know, they're in a brick, because they're all, you know, identified. Excuse me. And it's just really something. I go down there frequently and just sit on my bench. I bought a bench.
Right.
And there's 24 of those, by the way. And they
you can see those. You can see them in the background on the right, on their your right hand side. You can see the chairs, the benches.
Yeah, right. And the way it came out was we did a pentagon which is a 5-sided structure with the 5 services on each pyramid, and that also consequently creates a star in the center.
Right.
So it ended up working out really, really well that way. And
that was your design.
Well, it actually came from the city engineer part of it, and then I embellished on it and basically refined and making this what it ended up coming out to be,
right?
Including the benches and the surround and the spacing and the lighting and everything. Initially there was going to be no curb around it, but then we decided to put the curb in because that would hopefully prevent the skateboarders from coming up on the sides of the pyramids, and then we put up the chains because of that as well. And so we did a lot of changes, but the benches, when I actually had a part in that design, I wanted them to look kind of like gravestones from afar.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also special designed, those benches were all from some other design. We actually designed them.
Oh, okay.
So where the plaque goes in the top is made especially for that. And where the kick plate in the front, where the lights are, was specially designed for that, and so forth and so on. But yeah, that was an undertaking that was a labor of love. And I laid a lot of those bricks, probably 500-600 of them or more.
Wow.
And so
Yeah, what a great project. I mean, you have so much to be proud of, and I am so thankful for having this time with you and to learn about not only the NRBBA, but the impact you've had on our community in general. And we're so grateful and thankful for that.
Well, that's very, very kind of you. And obviously, whatever I've done has been done by hundreds of others, and nothing gets done by one person. And I enjoyed what I was able to do, and I'm very happy with the results of a lot of these efforts, and a lot of work went in from a lot of other people, and I bless them and thank them, and I thank you too, Nikki, because you've been very staunch supporter in the chamber and the NRBBA and Galleria and Redondo Beach for many years. I've known you a long time, and
Right.
you've always been there working in the community. You deserve equal credit for your contributions as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. My claim to fame really is a lobster at Lobster Festival. That's my big claim to fame.
Well, maybe I should have an interview with you about your contributions and Lobster Fest.
Yeah, we should. That would be a lot of fun. I hope Lobster Festival will come back, because I think both you and I like to see our community members enjoying their community. Obviously, that's behind everything that you've done, and that's behind everything that I do too. We want to see our businesses successful, and we want our residents and people who come into our community to enjoy it, to have a really special experience. And a lot of that happens because of you. So thanks again, Ernie. Really, really appreciate it.
Well, before we sign off, Mickey, I hope anybody who's watching this will help pitch the city to start their Lobster Fest again, because if you never have had the opportunity to see Mick Marafano in a lobster, if you haven't lived yet,
Exactly.
You went to chamber functions, and you went before the city council and other ministers and so forth in your lobster suit. And
we have done that, yes.
Yeah, yes, you're a dear. Well, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to visit with you.
Sure. Thank you, Ernie, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, hon.
Okay, bye-bye.